Hello, everyone, and welcome to this HEC Paris virtual conference room for HEC Paris webinar. When joining the conference room, you will be noticed that you have no microphone or camera turned on. You will, however, be able to ask questions and make comments using the Q&A menu that you will find at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. The professor will only answer questions and read comments sent to you through the Q&A menu, and will not be taking any questions coming from the chat. Please be aware that the question in the Q&A can be upvoted by clicking on the thumbs up icon and thus prioritize on the professor dashboard. Make sure that you keep the chat only for technical questions to our team only. We'll now begin, and I'll leave the floor to Anne Michaud, Associate Dean for Faculty, Education and Track and Pedagogy at HEC, to introduce our guest of today. Anne?
Thank you very much, Adrien. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and a warm welcome. Thank you very much for being with us today. I am Anne Michaud, Associate Dean for Pedagogy at HEC Paris, and it is my greatest pleasure to welcome my colleague Hélène Leuning, Associate Professor of Managerial and Organizational Accounting and Academic Director of the MSc in Accounting and Financial Management at HEC Paris, to talk about what is trust and why does it matter. She will give a closer look at uncertain and innovative entrepreneurial contexts. Hélène is an academic expert on topics related to innovation management and the innovation paradox, with a special emphasis on the challenging role of finance in the innovation process. Hélène, thank you very much for accepting the invitation to speak in this webinar. A warm welcome to you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anne, for having me today, and hello, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. So I'm very pleased to be here with you today. And as Anne just mentioned, so the topic of today is trust. We are going to talk about trust. Trust, as you know, is a very important matter. So we'll try to understand why it matters so much. I will provide you with a few theoretical insights about trust. And then we'll try to illustrate what's the impact of trust in relationships in these entrepreneurial ecosystems. So as Anne mentioned, I'll be giving a closer look at innovative and certain contexts. So typically entrepreneurial ecosystems. And then finally, the third part of my presentation today, I will try to focus also on the role of business schools, the specific role of business schools and the role that they can play in building trust and growing trust. So let's start the presentation. So first, why would you trust me basically today? So if you think about it, I think the main reason is because of my credentials. So I'm here as an HEC professor, so this is building credibility, on my side. So you have a look. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but you'll have a look. You see that I've got an academic profile, I've got a PhD and a tenure. Then also I have also a very active network in business and with active relations with practice, which might be reassuring to a great number of you. I've got a lot of experience in business education, from the very fresh undergraduates up to the skilled, mature, senior executives. And I've got also some research and teaching areas that are closely related to the topic of today. So that's the second reason. The second reason, as I just said, is related to this idea. I've got some experience and some, I would say, background in terms of innovative context and in terms of trust. So currently I'm writing, for instance, a case on Pfizer and BioNTech. So I guess those two companies will ring a bell for most of you. So that's a good example of a partnership where trust is highly at stake. Another example, another case that I have written is about Aster Capital. Aster Capital is a VC firm, it's a venture capital firm based, in Paris and San Francisco and also Tel Aviv. And they have created an innovation hub where the relationships and the partnerships between the startups on one hand from their portfolio, and on the other hand, the corporates who are mostly funding the fund, funding Aster, would relate and interact and partner also. So these are the reasons why maybe you would trust me today, okay? Now, if I want to make it a little bit more personal, obviously you want to know me a little bit better if you want to trust me beyond, I would say, the credentials. So one way to introduce this seminar is I'm going to give you 3 truths and 1 lie about me. So 4 statements in altogether, and you will have to choose which one is the lie, okay? So hopefully, I mean, I'm not lying to much to you, but that's just a nice way to introduce me and also to build trust a little bit further. So I'm gonna ask you to go to WooClap, as you see here. And then in WooClap, you will have to type HEC Trust in capital letters, so that you can participate. So I will allow a few seconds for you to do that, to connect and to enter the code, okay? And once you have done that, you will be able to participate to the following poll. So here are the 4 statements. First statement, I have paraglided. Second statement, I am a vegetarian. Third statement, I have 4 boys. And fourth statement, I can write with both hands, you know, ambidexterity. So which one is the lie? According to you, I will give you like 30 seconds.
If you let me add, maybe Hélène, you can use the link in the chat, click on it, and you should be able to access directly to a way for you to answer the question.
So remember, it's the lie you're looking for. Okay, so many of you don't believe I can write with both hands. Shall we stop this? Okay. Okay. You want to know about the correct answer? So I'm not a vegetarian. Okay, so that was the lie. So I have paraglided in my life. I have 4 adult boys, and I can write with both hands, left and right, but I'm not a vegetarian. I eat some meat, okay? I'm trying to reduce meat, but I still eat some meat. All right, so that was one way to start and to get to know me a little bit better. Now, the topic of today is not about me, it's about trust, okay? So I would like now you to let me know, when you think about trust, what is the first idea that comes to your mind, okay? What is the first idea that you would associate to trust? Is it like an empty buzzword? A lot of people talk about trust right now, you know, it says trendy and it's hyped. Is it something that you do not give easily? When you're thinking trust, do you think about a true good friend? Do you simply think about an international conglomerate? Because that's also, you know, a meaning of trust. Do you think about faith? Do you think about a respectful relationship? Do you think about credibility? So just a few seconds for you to answer that one. We need a few more people. So we have. Okay, so it's not an empty buzzword to you because otherwise you wouldn't be here with us today. It's not the international conglomerate, so you understood the purpose of this seminar or this webinar today. Now, there's kind of mix between faith and respectful relationship and credibility, and also a little bit of something you do not give easily and a true good friend. So let me show you the results in another way. Okay. All right, so yes, I think I would agree with most of you. I'm more on the right-hand side here, okay? When I'm talking about trust today, I'm talking mostly about a respectful relationship. And this respectful relationship is gonna be based on credibility, for sure. You're going to respect the person because, or the partner or the organization, if it's an organization, because, I mean, you think this organization or this partner can bring you something. But also, it's also a little bit of a leap of faith somewhere, okay? So trusting somebody is always about, you know, willing somewhere. And willing is about, I mean, having faith that this is a trustworthy partner also at some point. So this is what we are going to talk about. So just if you think about your most important partner in life, yes, love is going to be certainly a big part of the picture, but there are many other things attached to trust. And trust will be, in any case, an important issue. So let me give you some insights into what are the ingredients for success into this relationship, this trustful relationship we're talking about. One of the main ingredients is a good knowledge of each other. Okay, the more you know each other, the better or the easiest it is to trust. Okay. And it is going to be based also on the skills. I mean, you believe that the partner has the skills, you believe that the partner has the willingness to fix issues when there are issues, because there will be issues. Issues are part of life, I would say. And you believe also that the partner has values that are more or less aligned with yours, okay? So these are going to be really the ingredients for a trustful relationship. And this trustful relationship is based on knowledge, as I said, good knowledge of each other, and including the weaknesses. So these are points that I'm going to emphasize a lot today. It's not just about, you know, trusting because this person is perfect or this partner is perfect, but it's about knowledge, and knowledge including of the weaknesses and the vulnerabilities, so that you're willing to support also when issues are at stake. Okay. In sociology, just to give a little bit of background, we have this basic trust that we call ontological trust. And it is really a foundational trust that is coming from early childhood. It's a belief, a very simple belief, that when you act in a certain manner, the person in front of you is going to respond in a certain way. So you have some expectations about the answers. When you're acting, you expect reaction, and you expect reactions in a certain way. So not for 100%, but in a certain way. So it's really built in the early childhood. So you take a baby, when the baby cries, she expects her mother or any kind of loving adult to come and do something about it. So maybe feed her or change her, or simply rock her to ease anxiety, or figure out what is at stake, okay? So this is the kind of trust I'm talking about, a very basic, very foundational trust that is really necessary for us to move forward and to do things, okay? And to grow, so as I'm talking about a baby, to grow in a beautiful manner. So when you don't have this basic trust, when this basic trust is at stake, is hampered, then action is either paralyzed, so it turns into inaction, freezing, nothing happens, or action becomes violent, it becomes anarchical. And in France, we know what we're talking about, because I think that's one of the countries all over the planet where the level of distrust, for instance, towards politicians is at the highest, currently at least. And this probably accounts for the kind of problems that we've had. I mean, before COVID, actually, we had outbreaks of violence in France, I mean, 2 years ago, and that was probably related to this level of distrust towards politicians. So that's what I'm talking about. If you don't have this basic trust, then action you cannot operate somewhere. So some more examples in society. So society and institutions. So first about political institutions. In political institutions, so here with Trump and Biden, I guess you recognize them. We expect the two candidates to abide by the rules of the game and the rules of a democracy in the United States. So we expect the incumbent president on the very night or the very day of the election to call the elect president or the president-elect and to congratulate him or her, okay? And this has not happened last year. So that was really, that has increased the level of distrust tremendously in the North American, in the United States institutions, actually. So that was really a big issue. Now, if you come to business, in business situation, it's the same. I mean, business, we're talking about markets. Markets are a form of institution. And in this form of institution, in order for trade to occur, if you want people to deal, to make deals, to trade, you need also this kind of ontological foundational trust that people are going to abide by the rules of a trade game. And the rules of a trade games are, once you have a contract, you commit to that contract and you do whatever you said you would do in these contracts, okay? So that's the same. That's this basic trust I'm talking about. Not necessarily about being best friends, about being, elaborate partners, but if we don't have that, we cannot operate, we cannot trade, we cannot have business, we cannot have democracy, we cannot have whatever kind of social interaction and institutions that we need to operate as a social group. At a more individual level, and I will go really fast about that, it's probably about, if you want to inspire trust, it's probably about, enhancing skills like listening. If you're not a good listener, if you want to enhance trust, be a good listener, I would say first. It's also about being transparent. So sometimes you disagree and then you have to let people know that you disagree. So this level of transparency, and about good faith, I would say. So not manipulative. So I will. These are really the important skills at the more individual level to get this basic trust I'm talking about. Now, if we go one step further, in inter-team relationships, there are really 3 pillars for trust. If you look at research, at what the literature has said, the literature emphasizes that trust is going to be based first on competence. You are going to trust the partner because you believe she or he has the relevant skills to serve you, to help you in the relationship, okay? The second pillar, very important, is benevolence. So you believe that the other party, the partner, has a good knowledge of you and looks at you with, I would say, not threatening eyes, but kind of kind eyes, okay? Is willing to support you, including in the lower times or the hardest times. So you need this benevolence. You need to know that the partner knows you and is willing to help you, okay? And looking at you with kind eyes, I would say. And then integrity is the third pillar. By integrity here, I mean a set of values that are going to be shared. You believe that your values, to some extent, are aligned with the partner's value, but you see things a little bit in the same way related to the relationship, okay? So these are really the 3 foundations, the 3 drivers of trust. Let me take the example of BioNTech and Pfizer that I mentioned a moment ago. So in this relationship, obviously, it was about competence. The BioNTech had the tech, I would say, the biotech. I mean, they had the molecule and the new technology with the RNA messenger. The Pfizer had also some skills in terms of distribution, in terms of manufacturing, in terms also of getting approvals, large scale clinical trials also. So some relevant skills on both sides. Benevolence on both sides, knowledge. Actually, this cooperation didn't come out of the blue. They had been working for several years together already on vaccines. So they knew each other quite well when they started the race to the COVID-19 vaccine. And sharing a set of values also in terms of they were both here to help save the world, I would say, or to help develop this vaccine as soon as possible, to put it on the market and to put it on, to give availability to the world, to the planet, to their vaccine and to their technology. So a common set of value, some benevolence and good knowledge of each other, and some competence on both sides are really crucial. Now, if we have a more closer look at entrepreneurial ecosystems, and especially at the relationship between investors and entrepreneurs, again, we find those 3 pillars, okay? So on both sides, they are going to question the competence, the benevolence, and the integrity. So let's start with competence. The investor will certainly question whether the entrepreneur is competent. Okay, and how is the investor going to assess this competence? Well, probably looking at education, especially if it's a young entrepreneur. What kind of education has she got or has he got? You know, what kind of university, what kind of school? If it's a more mature entrepreneur who is already experienced with entrepreneurship, maybe looking at the resume or the professional background, even if he doesn't have any professional background in entrepreneurship, maybe some relevant professional background in terms of what kind of venture he wants to launch. And also the investor will look whether the entrepreneur belongs to an incubator, and which incubator. Is it a reputed incubator? Because belonging to an incubator means two things in terms of competence. It means once that you've been selected to enter the incubator, so you're probably competent, or at least the incubator has assessed you as competent to select you. And the second thing is that by belonging, by being in this incubator, you're going to grow your skills as an entrepreneur, because you will be exposed to some other startups, you will be mentored, so you're going to grow your skills. So this is about competence. On the other side of the mirror, the entrepreneur will also look at the competence, I would say, of the investor, of a venture capital firm. Is this an established VC, an established venture capital firm? Is the partner, specifically the partner, well known in the ecosystem? Is he or she competent? Okay, so that's for competence. Then we move to benevolence. Benevolence, the investor is going to question how much the entrepreneur, what kind of interest has the entrepreneur shown into understanding what is a VC? Okay, is it just a young entrepreneur or an entrepreneur that comes with his issues, or does she understand what the VC is after? The VC is after usually hyper growth to be able to sell the shares or exit the company at some point and reap the benefits and have some financial return at this point. So does the entrepreneur understand that? Okay. Does the entrepreneur understand the differences across VC? Because not all VCs are alike, okay? Does the entrepreneur understand the specific characteristics of the specific features of the fund that he or she targets? For instance, whether, it's a specialized fund or not, whether in terms of post-investment strategies is going to be pretty hands off, like I'll let you do your thing as an entrepreneur, or is the VC firm going to be more hands-on, meaning more mentoring and closer to the operations and closer to the business and giving insights in the business and mentoring more the startup? So these are tiny differences, but a very important difference, and the investors will look forward that the entrepreneurs knows about these differences, has this good knowledge. On the entrepreneur side, the question is obvious: does the investor care about my startup? Does the investor believe in my project? The good news here is that usually the investor would not invest unless he believes in the project and unless he cares about the startup. Okay, and once he has invested, he's going to care about the startup. He wants the startup to hatch and grow. Okay. So that's the kind of a question in terms of benevolence. And then eventually talking about integrity, about sharing a set of values. One very, very important value, I think, for the investors is going to be transparency. It's going to be a deal breaker if the entrepreneur either ignores or hides some of the weaknesses and some of the issues that might be at stake with his project, with his venture. All ventures, have issues, have plenty of questions. That's part of being the venture. And the investor would expect that the entrepreneur is transparent about those issues and is looking forward to have conversations about those, just to try to overcome them, okay? So the big lies or even the little lies, any concealment is going to be really prohibitive of a relationship on this side. And another very important point from the investor point of view is going to be, do we agree on what entrepreneurship is about? There are different forms of entrepreneurship, if you think about it. There is regular entrepreneurship, you know, the one that we talk about when we talk about regular vanilla VCs, just basically market-based ventures that want to find a market, usually with a technological solution, okay? So that's very, I would say, classical DC, but there is also social entrepreneurship. So social entrepreneurship, obviously, the values are not exactly the same. We're not talking about the same kind of entrepreneurship. So you're not going to go and target a regular VC if you are a social entrepreneur. You're going to go and look for funds with firms or funding firms that are going to help you as a social entrepreneur and share this vision of social entrepreneurship with you. Okay, and then another example that I would give you at the other extreme. If you think about really high-tech startups that are going to be really long-term, for instance, in clean energy, you know, breakthroughs, looking forward to have breakthroughs in clean energy, this is going to be really long-term. So it's not going to hatch in 5 years. You're not going to find a market in 3-5 years, okay? It's really maybe for the next 10, 20 years. So here you need to have a fund that has this perspective, this long-term perspective. So, for instance, like the Breakthrough Energy Fund by the foundation, by the Bill Gates Foundation. Okay, if we're talking about clean energy, because we're talking about climate and we're talking about a long-term thing. Okay, so they need to make sure that you share their vision of entrepreneurship. You understand what entrepreneurship in the same way as they do. Okay. So it's also a matter of risk and risk appetite somewhere. Okay. On the entrepreneur side, also reputation, honesty, transparency. Is the VC going to reinvest if it goes well? This is very important to them. It matters a lot to the entrepreneur. And again, we have the same vision of entrepreneurship, and we have about the same appetite for growth and for risk. Okay. Now, one point that I have mentioned, very important, the vulnerabilities. I emphasized a lot this point. Knowing each other is about understanding the fears of the partner. Okay, so basically, the deepest fears for an investor, for a venture capital firm, is to be stuck with a startup that stagnates. Okay, to have no exit possibility down the line. So when time comes for the VC to cash in and to pay back the lenders, they want to make sure that they can exit the company. Okay, so if a startup fails, you know that's part of the deal. You're a venture capitalist. You know that maybe a large number of your portfolio startups are going to fail and disappear. It's part of the deal. Of course, you're looking forward to a multiple. So you love the startups that are going to have this hyper growth and develop and have this multiple. And so in the end, the value will be multiplied by maybe 10, 20, maybe 100 sometime. Okay, that's great for you. Okay, but what you fear most are all the startups that are going to do okay. So they survive, but they don't really offer you an exit possibility because nobody else is going is willing to step in and to invest. Okay. On the entrepreneur side, I think the fears all relate to losing control, losing financial control, so being diluted, seeing others, at the end of the day, reaping the benefits of your work, and usually it's hard work to be an entrepreneur. Or losing control in terms of autonomy, in terms of independence, in terms of decision making. So financial autonomy and also decision making. That's what is important for the entrepreneur. So if you're aware of that, I think it can make the partnership, or it can make the investment, in this case, the deal, much stronger in terms of trust. Okay, if you understand both fears. All right, just a few more words, maybe very quickly. When we are in those situations, when we are in those ecosystems that are highly uncertain, trust is obviously more fragile, and trust also needs to be built very quickly. So this is what we call swift trust. That's a concept developed by Meyerson, which means that it's kind of type of context you don't have. I mean, it's a fast pace. You need to invest and to invest pretty quickly. So you need to trust very quickly, and you're going to trust based on the vulnerabilities, the fears, because you have this good knowledge of the fears, and you're going to invest also because you have this a good knowledge of the expectations of a partner. So before investing, you want to know what is, or before starting a relationship, you want to understand what is the outcome that the other party wants. Let me give you an example again with Pfizer and BioNTech. It was very important for Pfizer to understand what Ugur Sahin and what BioNTech had in mind in terms of an outcome. And actually, they just wanted to partner and to go on partnering with Pfizer. They were happy with that. But some other outcomes would be, okay, I want to license my patent and to sell my patents to other big pharma corporations. That wouldn't be an acceptable outcome for Pfizer, as you understand. Or maybe what I want to do is down the line, just sell the company for BioNTech. I just want to sell the company maybe to Pfizer, okay? And Pfizer was not ready for now, at least to buy BioNTech, okay? This is not what they do, okay? So that's about understanding what the other partner has in terms of down the line expectations, okay? And we have this other concept, which is called enforceability of trust. This is related to reputation, okay? In an ecosystem, and in France, the ecosystem is not huge, you know, the entrepreneurial ecosystem based in Paris, everybody knows everybody in the end. So there are sanctions associated to not being reliable. If you're not a reliable entrepreneur, or if you're not a reliable investor, everybody's gonna know about it, okay? And your reputation is at stake, okay? So this concept of enforceability of trust is about really behaviors and sanctions against unreliable behaviors within social groups, within the ecosystem in this case, okay? Very important also to understand. Reputation is really an important matter. Now, before I talk about business schools as a final part, I would like you to think a little bit about, you know, what is, when we talk about innovation, are we talking about technology first, or are we talking about customer-driven innovation, okay? Because the role of business school has something to do with that, of course. So here on the left-hand side, you have, you know, the tech, the artificial intelligence, the robots, and so forth. And then here, you have HEC campus, beautiful campus, by the way, and some of our young students here, okay? So we'll go into another book club. Maybe it will wake you up a little bit also. So you're gonna let me know, according to you, is innovation mostly tech-driven, or is it mostly customer-driven? I would like to have your feeling about that. All right. Okay. I think we have a pattern here. So we have a pattern with many of you really thinking more customer-driven. And that's why also business schools are going to be very important. Now, technology, I would say it's more balanced probably than you give a picture here. I'm a technophile somewhere. I believe also this is also what pushes us and help us, you know, grow and do new things. If you want to find new markets, we need new tech. And we are at an era where the technology is moving and is moving fast, okay? This is not recent, but the pace has been increasing, and the last 2 decades were really strong, you know. And I think what we look forward in the next 2 decades is going to be also very, very strong in terms of new technologies. So these new technologies, they are part of a very important chunk of the innovation and of the ecosystems also in terms of entrepreneurial ecosystems. Now, sometimes some of those technologies are long-term. I mentioned clean energy, which is more of a long-term thing, although we don't have much time left. But at some point, you're right, it will be and customer driven. It's about finding a market. It's about finding a solution to a customer pain point or a solution to a customer question and issue. Okay, so we do agree on that. And this is where business schools are going to play a very important role. When we're talking about business schools role, we're talking also about the role of networks, okay? What business schools are going to provide are networks, and networks are basically web of ties, web of overlapping ties, you know, people who get to know other people, who get to know other people, and who connect to each other. And these are very crucial in creating institutions. When the networks change or evolve, this is going to create new institutions, create institutions in the making. And this is also very important to build trust, okay? You trust people because you know them or because a friend of you will know them, okay, again. So the tech part is not to be, the tech part is also there, and engineering school play a very important role. So for instance, here at HEC, we're lucky enough that we are on the Plateau de Saclay, where there are lots of new technologies that are being developed, you know, on this plateau. We call that in French, Pôle de Compétitivité, with some, you know, technological schools, engineering schools. But the business school is going to have a very specific role into that. And let me give you maybe one example of what I mean by networks. When we think about business schools, I think we educate and we mix two categories of people, two categories of participants or two categories of students. On one hand, we have people who are more strategy and entrepreneurship minded, okay? These students or these participants, they understand the new business model based on digital technologies. They understand what is customer centricity, and they really push forward a notion of customer centricity. Let's go and interview the customer over and over again in an iterative manner. They understand the market issues. They understand the new business models, for instance, the SaaS, okay? So these are really more strategy and entrepreneurship minded. On the other hand, we also have a group of students or participants who are more finance oriented, okay? And some of them are or will be in the future investors. They will be, you know, managing private equity firms, or they will be managing venture capital firms, okay? So I think it's a very important role to play, to have a place, both a physical place and also sometimes a virtual place, where these two groups can connect and interact with each other, okay? They're going to share the same courses, they're going to share the same extracurricular activities. Most of the time, they have a lot of respect and they admire their different set of skills because the skills are clearly different. I'm just going to provide you, as Anne mentioned, I have in charge a program for an MSc program in accounting and financial management. And so in this program, obviously, we have accounting and finance students, so more on the finance side. And some of the students choose to go and join a program, a track where they can go and help their entrepreneur fellows at Station F. So HEC has a big incubator in the French entrepreneurial ecosystem. And some of the finance students, some of the finance accounting students, they go and they help their fellow the fellow classmates who become entrepreneurs there, okay? So I think it's a very powerful thing in the short term. In the short term, everybody's happy. finance students, they get to understand what entrepreneurship is about. The entrepreneurs, they are clearly happy to have, some resources who can help us with building their first cash flow statements, modeling their first P&L, their first business plans. I mean, doing, all the accounting work for them because they don't have the time, because sometimes they don't have the skills. Okay, so it's really a win-win situation in the short term. And I do believe, and that's my conviction, that it is also building for trust for the long term. That down the line, maybe 10 years, 15 years later, those two groups of students, they will meet again. Some of them, as I say, will be partners in VC firms. Some of us will be serial entrepreneurs, maybe for the third time or the fourth time, and they will meet again. Okay, and trust will be there from early on. So this is an example of what I mean. So I really believe in the power of business school in making this happen, and in strengthening the network and strengthening the relationship. This is what I wanted to share with you today, mostly. So now the floor is going to be open for questions. So I'm sure Anne will help me and moderate the floor. So helping you with your questions.
Thank you very much, Hélène. Thank you for this nice presentation. We do have questions. So there's a first question that is very much voted on. So I will start with that one. Several people are very interested to have your vision about this role of trust in different cultures. And the question is trust, first of all, is there a role of culture in building trust? Do we build it in different way in different countries? And maybe we could also extend that to different sectors. So basically, we talked, and I know you're working a lot about entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. So is it different in an entrepreneurship context compared to well-established 100-year-old companies? So maybe first, let's start with culture.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think these are two very important questions. So culture is my first love. I would say I did my PhD on cultural issues, back then, so quite a few years ago now, and even a few decades ago. Culture obviously is going to play an important role because, as I said, trust is also about sharing values. So it's easier when you belong to the same culture because implicitly. You share a number of values simply because from infancy you've been taught and educated, I would say, with this set of values. So going across, crossing the border is always more difficult, okay? So it makes trust, you need to pay even more attention, I would say, when you want to build trust across borders and across cultures. Competence is not an issue. I think we can all recognize competence across borders. It's kind of easy to understand easy. Well, if you need to take a close look, of course, but to understand what people are able to do in different cultural contexts. When it comes to benevolence, that's the most important part. It's about making sure that it will be more difficult, but we are willing to do that, okay? I'm going to take a very personal example. Learning is my spouse's name. I married a German guy. So that's one of the beauties, I think, of Europe. But we have this diversity in culture. It's next door, the different culture, different languages. It starts with different languages and different culture. So yes, trust takes a little bit more, it's tougher to build it. But at the same time, I think it's even more powerful because this is this diversity, which is going to bring more creativity, more innovation, but you must be willing. Competence is not an issue. It's about making sure about the set of values, and it's about making sure that benevolence is there, okay? That we are willing to cross the border and to go towards the other and understand how different the other one might be thinking, okay, in terms of culture. So that's the first kind of answer we would have. Now, in terms of entrepreneurial ecosystem versus I would say, more traditional business. I've got a strong background in traditional business also. I've done a lot of management control a lot and performance management a lot in my life in big organizations also. And I work a lot about those partnerships between the world, the entrepreneurial world of startups and the partnership with, for instance, the big pharma, but also this is true with banks. I mean, many industries now would look forward to have more collaboration, more open innovation. Again, it's difficult. I think one of the main differences has to do with the pace. The entrepreneurial ecosystems are really fast-paced environments. Well, the vulnerabilities are going to be with money. Money is an issue for a startup. Obviously, cash is an issue for a startup. So the startup would expect for instance, for partnering, and the startup would expect to be paid, in time, in due time, not to have long delays of payment and things like that. So that's one of the things. And I think also another vulnerability is another fear is to lose control. Okay, when they go into a partnership with a big corporation, they want to make sure that they remain independent, that they are not going to be at the mercy, I would say, of a large corporate. On the large corporate side, I guess one of the fears, one of the vulnerabilities is reputation, is risk. So reputation is a really, really high stake for them. So anything that could, damage your reputation, they're not willing to do. And that's something that the startup must understand. Don't go into partnering with a startup or with this entrepreneurial ecosystem unless you're sure that they understand that your reputation is a really important thing for you. I think that's really one of the things that matter. Now, maybe about just the geographical issues. One thing that I could compare, obviously, it comes always to the mind, is we compare French entrepreneurial ecosystem with the Silicon Valley. The Silicon Valley has, is so big in the world when we talk about entrepreneurship and we talk about innovation and technology. We think about them first. I think what would be stronger probably in the Silicon Valley, I must confess, is the strength of a network. They have very powerful and very strong networks over there. So this is going to have, some effects. Now we have to be cautious also because there is also a lot of branding and marketing associated to it. The Silicon Valley brand is so strong. And it's a brand and it's so strong, but it's going to attract investors, money, to attract talents more. Okay, it's not necessarily that there is more trust, but there is this brand and there is also this strength in the network. Now, when it comes really to trust over there, I think is also, you have to be careful with that. It's very fragile. And the enforceability of trust that I have mentioned, it can be really brutal. Okay, so if there is any disillusion about you in this ecosystem, you're out, and you're out for a while. Okay, so it can be really, really brutal. So I think it has less to do with trust and more with the strength of a network there.
Sure, thank you very much, Hélène. There are many questions, so I apologize in advance. I will never be able to cover them all. You will not be able to cover them all. But so I'm trying to summarize. There is one from Catherine that was very much of interest for several of our people in the audience. Is okay. There is always some sort of fragile balance, and she asked how to draw the line to allow fears and vulnerabilities to build trust, but not to show some kind of incompetence or instability. So you have to play with it, but not too much, right?
Yeah. It's a delicate balance. Now, if you think about it, I think it's not exactly the same nature. I mean, competence, any kind of partnership, you must think about what you're looking forward to find, what kind of competence you go and want from the partner, but you don't have usually, okay? So it's really about competences, and maybe I could give you again this example of Pfizer and BioNTech. So really, Pfizer, I mean, R&D, they have understood about a decade ago, or more than a decade ago, that they would never be able to compete with the biotechs, okay? So they had to partner with the biotechs, because when it comes really to the research phase, to the very early stage, they would never be as good as these people are, okay? So they go and partner with the biotechs because of that. They go and want to fetch this competence, okay? Very early stage biotechs. The biotech doesn't have the competence to scale, okay? They cannot scale. Even clinical trials, when it comes to clinical trials, large scale, they don't have the capacity, they don't have, you know, the ingredients, they don't have the sample of people that they need to have the large scale clinical trials. They don't have the regulatory skills, okay? Legal, being approved, okay? They don't have the skills to distribute on the market. So they go and fetch competences, specific competences. When I'm talking about vulnerabilities and fears, I think it's a different level. It's more about understanding what makes them fragile and could put the relationship at risk if you don't pay attention to that. So reputation for Pfizer, big pharma, is a deal breaker, okay? If BioNTech does anything that could damage the reputation of BioNTech, that's the end of it, okay? That's the end of it. And in the same way, if Pfizer does not take into account that there is money at stake for BioNTech and that they need this money to do the development, because the development is a lot of brain, it's a lot of brainy people, and you need to pay them, okay? And you need to put a lot of effort into that, and a lot of hours and a lot of effort of really smart people, okay? If you are not paid in time, that's the end for them. So this is also a deal breaker. So you see, sometimes it's not the same level. That's why you really need to get into this fine, I think, understanding of what are the competencies you want to fetch and what are the vulnerabilities, the fears, okay? That's the kind of answer I would give.
Yes, right. And then we have a very long question from Bogdan. There are several questions in one, really. So thank you, Bogdan, for always being very active in your questions. So let's start. There's one question which I think is quite interesting for all of us, is how can we decide whether to trust a business partner? And at the end of the day, can we expect, what should we expect from business partners? Are they just cold-blooded executives who do anything they can to win? Or should they be a bit more, you know, sort of include more ethics? And then in his questions, there's also what's the role of business business schools and education institutions in that? What is our role in shaping, crafting business people? And therefore, then what should come to mind firstly when we say business people?
I guess the question is probably a little bit more at the individual level. And certainly, and that's one of the things that you should expect when you choose a business school, that they're going to help you also grow soft skills, not just hard skills. Hard skills are important for the competence, okay? But the soft skills are going to be a large part of the picture. I went pretty fast on that slide, you know, at the individual level, but I could elaborate a little bit on that. There are those listening skills. I think if you want to choose a good partner, make sure this person or this partner has some good listening skills. Make sure they are transparent. They are not going to hide anything from you, including the things that could be, you know, conflicts, potential conflicts, because it's better to talk about things that you disagree or maybe you are going to disagree on than not to talk about them. And at some point it will bounce back, okay, like a boomerang effect. So it's a lot about listening skills, and making sure that you find a partner that is going to be transparent, and where you have this feeling that they are not going to use you in one way or another, okay? But making sure that this is going to be, and we're back to this idea, a respectful, balanced relationship, okay? So this is true at the individual level, and this is going to be also at the organizational level, I guess. But you want, choosing a partner is really, we have this issue also of the first, but that's the leap of faith I was talking about also at the beginning. There is always, at some point, you must step in. It's unknown. You're not sure. You're not sure it's the right partner, okay? You're not sure it's the partner for life, or it's not the partner for the next 5 years, okay? Because usually in business, and talking about investors and entrepreneurs, typically it will be 5-7 years, okay? Maybe up to 10 years that they go together. So you're not sure, okay? But you're willing to do that step, and you do the step. It's like going into marriage at some point, I guess. Do a step because what you see is reassuring you, and you want to know the vulnerabilities again and again, and you want to know what this person, the weaknesses of this person or this partner. It's okay. Okay. And of course, we are more in a world that promotes a lot of, okay, I'm the best businesswoman and I'm the best businessman and I'm going to perform. And so, yes, sometimes it is difficult. But I think among the skills that you can grow is listening, not manipulating people, okay, because this will bounce back at some point. And I think this is the kind of things that you should expect from a business school. That they are not just teaching you or learning you how to become a high performer, but making you, growing in understanding who we are and where are our own weaknesses and our fragilities. I think it's a big step forward. I think the whole life is made of that. Actually, the whole life is a path towards getting to know you and including what is not so good with you, okay, and dealing with it, okay, and dealing with it. So that's what I would suggest. Now it's a difficult path, I know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Hélène. Maybe shall we go for one last question? A little bit. Let's find a shorter one, but very current. We're surrounded with all those fake news. Mm-hmm. So what is the role of trust in the time of fake news? Should we lower the bar to trust anyone? I hope not. But so how do we deal with that?
I'm not sure. I could try and answer. I hope I don't answer. I hope I answer the question and not next to the question. My view on that is that the problem with trust is that trust is very double-sided. It's going to be back actually to the very first question about culture. I think trust, it's easy to trust people who look like you, as you said, you build communities. So especially online, there is a lot now with also building communities and people who want to build kind of strong groups with the same set of values. Okay, so on one hand, it is good, of course, because there is trust associated to that, and it's building cohesion, and it's a community. But on the other hand, it can be also very damaging when you go too far into this marketing of communities and these. So I'm not sure I'm answering really the fake news question, but really you have to be careful that trust doesn't turn into something like sectarian movements. I would say that's the both side, the downside of trust. Okay. And that's what we all see, and obviously now online it's even pregnant and prevailing, and all this fake news and this group of people and those communities, and it goes even further than that, because when you think about it, and I know Anne is a marketing professor, so sometimes I'm pushing a little bit of that, but this is very far from the kind of trust I'm talking about when we're talking about the marketing of trust, with algorithm that would recognize what are your preferences, and based on your preferences would mate you, would choose for you the kind of music you listen to, the kind of movies you will look at, and so forth. So be careful with trust, Because on one hand, we need it to operate the, as I said, ontological trust. We need it to have fruitful relationship that which outcome is going to be more innovation, more creativity, more development, and better things in the end, and performance in the end. But also, when we talk about trust, we talk sometimes about people who are, in their community. And the next step is the community has some sectarian aspects. And then the next step is, when you think about it historically, it's an extreme example, but the people around Hitler, they had the level of trust among them was really, really high to the end, to the point that at the end, they were, as a small group of his people, ready to go into self-murder at the very end of the war. All of them, I don't know whether you're aware of that, but the whole family with 7 children, was there in the bunker at the end, and they murdered their children, and they self-murdered just because they had so much trust in their leader, in their Führer. So we have to be very careful about that also. I'm not sure that answers totally the question of fake news, but fake news, it's a little bit about that, it's a little bit about building trust, but killing to some extent, or curbing down critical views and personal judgment. So trust should never replace personal judgment. It should never kill personal judgment at any point in time. That's maybe right. The takeaway.
Thank you, Hélène. And I think as well, there were several questions about rebuilding trust. There were several questions about, can you share tools, or can you share on how to build trust? So there were quite some questions about tools and things. And I think that partially answers this question. There were questions also about how you're going to share resources, are you going to share publications and so on. So we usually do that after webinars at HEC. So you will receive some information and resources. So I hope you will get all your information. If you want more, don't hesitate to contact HEC. People in charge of these webinars will be glad to answer and glad to forward you the appropriate information. So once again, Hélène, thank you very much for sharing this. I think we are all in a time where we find this dimension of trust so important. We've seen it so much in the news in all our respective countries lately. I think you gave a number of examples where trust is really at the very high level of priority. So thanks a lot for sharing this webinar with us this week. It was highly interesting and highly relevant in our world. So thanks a lot, Hélène, again. And
I want to thank you also. Thank you, Anne, for having me again. And thank you to all of you who were watching and for your very insightful questions, actually. Very difficult questions also, but very insightful. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. And see you.